Good afternoon, everyone. Likewise. Thank you so much for being here today and joining us. We truly appreciate it. My name is Mona Al-Hashmi. I'm Cross-Border Manager at Hub 71, and I will be moderating today's session.
You guys are up now. It's exciting.
Maya, we can hear you. Okay. Well, again, thank you for joining our session. Today we will be discussing blockchain's role in ensuring IP is protected across protection rights. So we'll be deep diving into the world of digital assets, particularly on IP and how it is revolutionizing, blockchain and how it is revolutionizing IP protection rights. So we'll dive into the digital assets realm, and we have an expert panel that I'm very happy to have here with us today that will be educating us on this current landscape of IP protection, as well as its future foresight moving forward for the next 5 to 10 years. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. I would like to introduce each one of you. I think the best way to do it would be for each of you to introduce yourselves for 2 to 3 minutes. Tell us about your innovation, your blockchain technology, and how is it enhancing IP protection rights.
Okay, cool. I can go first. My name is Sota Watanabe. Thank you very much for having me today. I'm a director of Sonium. Sonium is the chain, Started Lab, I'm CEO, is developing together with Sony Group. Obviously, Sony Group has a lot of IPs, and we are making the entertainment layer of the next internet. And it is Ethereum layer 2, so we are making the infrastructure to onboard a billion of the people on chain. Thank you very much.
Please.
This is SY, I'm the co-founder of Story, and we're building a blockchain that's focused on intellectual property. And we basically think that with the advent of AI, basically IP is at a huge crossroad. Every AI is basically training and remixing your IP at a speed of light and basically producing all these AI-generated IPs, and it's really not basically attributing, compensating, basic returning and licensing the IP in the right way. So we want to fix this.
My name is Yat. I'm chairman, co-founder of Animoca Brands. We're a company today that's probably most known for having done a lot of investments in the NFT blockchain space, particularly on the IP side of things. Over 540 portfolio companies, particularly interested in IP protection is one area, but the other one also is in original native digital IP that can be owned essentially by the end users, kind of what we see with Bored Apes and Pudgy Penguins, all part of our group, as a way to sort of have shared ownership in the space.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. My first question will be addressed to all of you. Given your expertise in this space and as blockchain innovators, what do you believe, or how do you believe blockchain is enhancing transparency and security? In what manner? And if you could please give us a real use case example where this has been successfully implemented. Please, we'll start with you.
Oh yeah, I can go first. So when it comes to transparency, right? And we are making entertainment layer of the next internet. And we believe that everyone is a creator. And we would like to empower the creators rather than a specific company or specific product. And when creator makes something, let's say movie, 100 people or thousands of people make one movie, right? But people only know the director, even though 100 people are involved. So what we would like to make is the creator DID, which empower creators and individual. By making so, we can prove the skill and the creativity of the individual on chain. So we needed this kind of solution to increase transparency and increase the loyalty distribution, IP management registration, and these kind of use cases.
Wonderful. SY, same question for you.
Yeah, as you see, but at the moment, the hottest topic is AI, and AI runs on IP, not only just compute. So, I mean, AI exists because it's training all the original IPs that you are producing as a creator. And what we do is we make IP programmable. So we turn intellectual property that's wrapped up in legal contracts into IP Lego. So every single IP on Story Protocol, Story blockchain, actually has a licensing and royalty sharing terms that's actually legally enforceable off-chain, embedded into each piece of IP. So we now have about 100 apps that's everything from fashion to gaming. So one app is called Ablo. It has everything from Balmain to Crocs as IPs registered. And there are some of their newest IPs, is registered, and anyone can actually make a derivative fashion out of the latest Balmain shoes or Crocs shoes and actually produce it and sell it and actually share the revenue with these fashion brands. Or another company is called Punkland. It's a 2 million MAU, 2 million user base gaming company out of Korea. And basically what they do is they have, it's like Roblox, but it's really without any code skills, with just help of AI. With various gaming assets, you can start producing games really, really quickly. But all the gaming assets has embedded licensing royalty sharing terms. So if you make a game character, game design, you can actually then use it for, if someone makes it, another gamer can start using other game assets, and with the AI, they can create a game very, very quickly. So what we do is IP, you don't need to talk to lawyers, you don't need to talk to any middleman. You can actually fork and remix all these IPs with the help of AI, and all the royalties and attribution will be actually kept on blockchain.
Wonderful.
So I think maybe just to touch a little bit on what SY was talking about, the way that he describes sort of, I guess, UGC and mashup culture is basically how we think of tokenization and network effects. So intellectual property for us and the proliferation of that actually expands through UGC, and they actually become network effects. And that's actually what is the first part that we think blockchain really enables. So you can build communities essentially on-chain in a manner that you couldn't do before, because they have shared ownership in it, and that actually expands that. And we saw this with digitally native IP that projects we're involved in, like Pudgy Penguins, for instance, with NFT projects, or Bored Apes, or Land and Sandbox. That's one example. But the second thing that we also focused on, and we do this with Open Campus and with the educational side, is it unlocks intellectual property rights in areas that wasn't possible before. So imagine what the music industry would be like if there was no IP protection. There would be no Taylor Swift, there would be no Michael Jackson, none of that would work. And the reason why it was possible, because it was a legal framework, right? You were protected through a lawyer, the patent office, all that kind of stuff. But it only made sense if you had a certain amount of revenue attached, because the cost of actually protecting it legally was just too expensive, right? To go through the conveyancing, the legal costs, everything. But now, through blockchain and basically with NFTs, for value less than $1, you can actually start protecting your intellectual property. So I'll give you two examples. One of them, all part of our portfolio, one of them sounds whimsical, but it's like dance moves. So they're called Dance Fight. It's a company that basically protects their dance moves on chain. And it sounds funny, but the story was that the dancer had his moves ripped off by Epic, a game company, and the dancer basically saw his moves as an emoji on Fortnite. And so he basically said, hey, that's my moves. I love the game, but can I get something for it? And Epic was like, no, prove it, because he didn't have a way of doing it. And he didn't have money for a lawyer to go and say, can I do that? So that was the birth of Dance Fight, because basically dancers were able to protect their moves on chain to prove that they were the ones to do it, and then basically receive royalties and stuff from that. So that's kind of one example. The second example is teachers. So teachers create educational content, all over the world, and they can receive a little bit of revenue share for it. Maybe like places like Venezuela, maybe like $5 or $10 a year, very small money. So it's not enough to protect it as an intellectual property asset, but if it becomes an asset, someone can now buy it for a 10 or 20% yield. So that $10 or $20 yielding asset can now be worth $50 to $100. And that, by the way, is the birth of wealth generation that we see with real estate or shares or all sorts of assets. And so that's the foundation of digital property rights. If you have a way to have property in something, then you can have actual capital appreciation and capital value attached to it. Right? And that's how we see the frame. And basically, we try everything. Our mission is to deliver digital property rights for that purpose.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. SY, could you tell us a little more about how Story Protocol is revolutionizing IP protection in the age of AI?
Yeah, so I think I've already touched upon it in the previous kind of comments, but basically a lot of people, there's one way is to cease and desist all the things that you see that Grok to, OpenAI is making that's similar to your IP. But another way is to basically say, it's impossible for current centralized legal system to do one-on-one negotiation with all the IP makers to actually license this IP. So it's like impossible for OpenAI to all these IP creators to go out to like million creators and start basically negotiating against all these creators. So what we say that the baseline is that everyone should declare through blockchain that you own the IP, but not only say that you own the IP, but also declare the licensing and royalty sharing terms around the IP and just embed that on your IP. So it's almost like having a QR code for every single intellectual property or data points in the world. And even especially for, for some AI model companies that are actually producing, bunch of AI assets, they can kind of actually, even the model, the agent can set the terms around all the outputs, how they can be used, and so on and so forth. So once that's happened now, anyone can just go interact with the apps that are actually powered by our ecosystem and actually start forking and remixing and creating different derivatives, like the fashion app that I just mentioned, where people are making a bunch of Balmain derivatives to Crocs derivatives as their own fashion items and sell that on Instagram as a drop down by sharing the shoppable link on there. So, or another app is called Hook Music, which actually has licensed Downtown Music, all the catalog. So now anyone can go into Hook Music and click different music beats and music pieces and create AI mashups. And then actually when they're monetizing it through Spotify, SoundCloud, everything at the back end actually gets shared in terms of revenue share and royalty sharing. So yeah, so I think what we do is, it's not about just like, cease and desisting, but actually try to make it easy, like how Spotify has done with listening to music around licensing and remixing and making a mashup with AI with your IP.
Thank you. Sota, back to you. So as a layer 2 chain, can you tell us more about what sets Sonium apart from other L2 solutions and in terms of leveraging IP specifically?
Yeah, I think one major unique things of the Sonium is Sony Group's involvement into the chain. I would say the first Ethereum layer 2 or major layer 1 chain developed by big company, right? I made a lot of mistake, but Web3 people like us start from tech and try to find the customers. But for us, we have a customers, potentially billions. Then we are deciding which to develop. So by doing so, we would like to go mainstream. So we are saying GM, because GM stands for good morning, right now. But after Sonium, we would like to make it as go mainstream. So right now, less than 1% of the people are using blockchain in their daily lives, and mainly rich people or tech people, because blockchain is not accessible. So we would like to focus on the user experience and the customer's experience to empower creators. And eventually, we would like to onboard a billion of the people who have never used blockchain before. Yeah, this is what we would like to do. And the entertainment is pretty much important domain to onboard more people. Already, Web3 is already recognized as the finance layer of the next internet, and I think entertainment is the next. Fiat currencies sometimes compete against crypto, and vice versa. But Web3 technology can be penetrated into the entertainment industry, such as concert, or such as music, movie, and so on. And the user does not need to know NFT. The user does not need to know even Sonium when they interact. So we are focusing on the customer experience and the user experience to empower creators.
Wonderful. It's very important. It goes without saying, for mass adoption, one would need the customer experience and the customer interface to be on par. So, of course, that goes into play. Back to you, Yat. So Anima Co. Brands has partnered with traditional IP firms such as TNB Media Global and Lamborghini. So if you could tell us a little more about the challenges that you have faced and encountered when it comes to adopting traditional IP systems and integrating that.
Sure. I mean, we've worked with hundreds of brands, right? Like, for instance, on Sandbox, you've got like Gucci and you've got like Adidas and all the type of brands. So we've had a history, really. That's why we call it Animoca brands, right? Because the brands part is actually the history of working with all the third-party media brands, whether it's in gaming, culture, entertainment. I think the biggest challenge that IP brands have today in Web3 is the concept of ownership. Because the business model of an IP company is to rent your brand, and then you generate value from that renting, and then you relicense it to someone else. And we see this in the gaming space, where I sort of have the license to use maybe let's say, the Lamborghini in a game, in Web3, the assets that you buy ought to be owned by the user because it's actually something that the user gets to own. But in the Web2 model, they're just licensing it. So after 3 years, if the license is done, the game is done, and you no longer have the rights to use it. And the people who bought the assets actually can't use them in the traditional space, whereas in Web3, you have to own them. And I think this is the paradigm shift that a lot of the traditional IP licensing companies struggle with. But the ones who get it, like, for instance, BMW and Lamborghini, for instance, and these type of brands, are beginning to understand that actually the core of what makes an IP powerful is a shared sense of ownership. So, for instance, in the older days, we used to think of a centralized model of distributing IP, like a movie, and you have a big advertising and so on. But today, you can't launch a movie without it being on TikTok and in YouTube and everything else, and when people make mashups and create content. And by doing so, you're actually creating a sense of a shared ownership, even if they don't own the IP. And what Web3 does, it actually gives you that sense of ownership and gives you that agency, and then with that, you have the ability to become a true advocate because you have a stake in it. Right? And I think that's the future of IP, generally speaking. And we think the most powerful IP brands in the future are the ones who are willing to share the rights of their brands to others, not just rent.
All right, we're almost out of time. I would love one more question for each of you. If you could quickly tell us, in your opinion, what are the biggest challenges currently when it comes to the legal and regulatory authority with utilizing blockchain for IP? What do you think needs to change and change fast in order for us to expedite this mass adoption? I see that this question was...
Yeah, maybe I'll start. I think the big one is, I think, especially under this new regime, right?
Yeah.
With Trump and the new cabinet, I think a lot of the concerns around, particularly NFTs, which were considered this type of stores of intellectual property, I think the concerns around them being potential securities will probably go away. So I think that's one. I think the rest of the world is not really looking at intellectual property and NFTs in a regulatory sense. Most of them are leaving it into essentially governance by essentially the community and the companies themselves. And I actually think NFTs and those type of IP rights are going to be more covered by consumer protection than through the SEC. It makes more sense, right? It's kind of like you buy a car and it doesn't drive. Okay, that's consumer protection. That's not a security breach, right? And I think because it's tokenized and has a financial value, it sometimes gets confused, but I think regulators are getting much smarter about it. For instance, in Hong Kong, Singapore, it's very clear in those places that NFTs and IP is a very different category and actually not regulated by the financial authorities.
Thank you. Anything you'd like to add?
We have things on digital native IPs are slightly easier because they're born out of it, but at the same time, we're exploring, some of the companies on top of our blockchain is exploring intellectual property RWA. So an example of that is tokenizing BTS song or Blackpink song or Justin Bieber song. And actually, let's say you buy Justin Bieber's Peaches or Sweet Home Alabama, like a classic song, for $10 million. And let's say you get a 7% yield every year. And this is already being done by funds like Hipgnosis and the London Stock Exchange that just got bought by Blackstone and many other. There's a huge music catalog businesses out there. But so for majority of countries out there besides, a few countries, actually, it's hard to, is this a security commodity? That kind of issue is not really defined. And there's a lot of IP asset that generates cash flow, financial value like this, like music. So when actually you tokenize and actually allow fractional ownership for users, actually that's what these IP RWA protocols are doing. So what they're trying to start with is actually just geo-blocking some of the countries that are very, gray area around this. So that's one of the things, that really need to be clarified.
Right,
If I could just quickly add, I think there's distinctions, right? If there's an IP which has like a royalty component, in many jurisdictions, it would be considered a security, but can go under a securitized sort of framework. But the one component that seems to be outside of that is owning the IP in itself. So you see this with Bored Apes. For instance, if I own the image of the Bored Ape, I have all the rights to basically use it. You see that in sort of burger shops and shoes and the fashion designs. The ownership of that IP is owned by you, and you're the one making it work. And by buying the NFT, you have that right. That sits outside of a security framework because you're working to make money from it, but it's not passive in terms of an income, right? So I think there's ways around. And by the way, these paradigms weren't possible before. And as a result, IP development on these IP brands are much bigger because you have an army of thousands of owners of NFTs that become your agents rather than hiring thousands of employees to basically do the work for you.
Thank you so much. I'm
Yeah,
going to have
I
to end it there. Thank you, gentlemen, for your expertise and your insights. It's very exciting to see all of the things that blockchain will be unlocking for us in the near future. Thank you all for your kind attention, and then thank you to ADFW for organizing such a wonderful event. And finally, I'd love to give a final shout out to our partners, Hashed, that have really delivered and building something special from and out of Abu Dhabi. Thank you all for attending.